Hey, you guys. So, I've been wanting to get you a little bit of some of my takeaways, like a little bit of debriefing from the couple of councils I did with the men, which some of you are watching. Some of you men are watching this. It's taken me a minute, just had a lot to do. Check it out. So, I wanted to give you a little Flora moment, and I just planted all this plumeria. Pretty excited about it. Um, Welcome to my home. Welcome to my thoughts today. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say up front that I've made this video actually several times now, and every time I've discarded it because I feel a little hesitant about. I'm just very aware of the inflammatory and kind of delicate nature of addressing some of the things that I was addressing with the men, particularly in relationship to women. Um, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to think about three of my biggest takeaways as I've sat with it. Um, and, one of the biggest things for me was that I asked the men to sit with me so that I could become more clear about what it is that is my right relationship from the body of the school and from my own being. And I've gotten a lot of clarity about that. So I am going to be extending. Yeah, there are, I know I'm clear about some of how I would like to interact with the men, what I feel like would probably be most valuable. And that's just in the works, along with many other things. Um, and clearly, one of the things that is that, I'm sitting at this privileged and kind of honorable position, honoring, beautiful position of being really I'm invited into so many women's lives in the deepest way, and I'm meeting them there. And so I feel like both the school and even just my own being at this point after so many years, it's like a treasure house, like I'm a repository of all of this. I've got a pretty intense memory about certain things, and I listen deeply. So there's a lot that I'm holding and feel like I'm blessed to hold in terms of some of the women's mysteries, some of what really opens a women, some of what we as women struggle with the most, even in terms of our own blind spots, And one of the things that I value about the school so much is that we uphold each other, we nourish each other, but we are also it's a safe place to very shamelessly consider where we're entitled, where we're in fantasy, where we're desperate. It's important. We need that. We need to be able, as human beings, as soulful beings who are actually growing and wanting to become more and more true, we need a place to come to where we can evaluate, right? What our choices are, where they're coming from, and how we can redirect, how we can realign. But where all that was going, I don't know. What I wanted to give you in general were some of my takeaways, and one of them was I feel more clear about what my right relationship is with the men, and we'll be coming forward with some of that in probably a couple of months. Um, One of my biggest takeaways was or the biggest impacts was just the level of sincerity that the men came with. There were 15 in the first call and 17 in the second call. I really hadn't met, I don't think any of them, maybe one or two. Many of them came because they have women in their lives who have been in the school and who've been really impacted, and they've been moved by how their women and the women, their friends, their lovers have been um, served by the school. So it was beautiful for me to feel like, and I had kind of known this from before, that actually one of the ways that I've been most deeply serving men over this time is by serving their women, which makes total sense. Each of us has our own like closest sisters and closest brothers, and so that was beautiful. That was touching. I was really touched by. There was a level of openness in the men and a willingness to really share, and to even share some things that I think kind of culturally um, in the current climate, would it, were risky, and that was significant to me. And I think it speaks to, what my question is and where I want to be meeting with the brothers is like, what is it to meet, be in relationship to, serve, and be served by a deep feminine woman, a woman who is cultivating deep feminine presence, non-oppositional, non-entitled, cultivating. What is it for both of us to cultivate? What is that? And what is this? I guess the second takeaway is, we ended up on the first call, especially coming to real considerations around the sacred marriage and how it is that, kind of like in an ancient way, woman and man make each other true, come together in a way that is for the benefit of all of creation, not just for the benefit of themselves or even of humanity, but that there is a connection between our loving, our harmony, and the ancient ways that are old, and still with us, right? So this is where, being with the men with this invitation of, the invitation was, hey, come hang out if you want to explore a little bit what it is to be in reciprocal relationship with deep feminine women. And so there was this, there was every man there was interested in depth, is drawn to the depth, is drawn to what they've seen or experienced or sensed within the women in their lives. And this, one of the things that came from it was this, for me, and I think for everyone, was this respect and this remembrance for the way that we can elicit nobility from each other. That's what we're really here to do, and that this nobility of soul, right? It's not just about kindness and all the good things. It's also about nobility. How do we actually inspire one another to that which we are already ourselves aspiring to? And there are, I think that's part of what the school is holding, part of what I would want to be joining with the men around. Is like, what are those arts? There are skillful means in relationship to this that go way beyond like dating advice, and really source into the soul of things and a kind of covenant that I think for those of us drawn to a life of depth, of cultivation, that would be the other thing, is that there is an acknowledgement and a clarity, which it's not that I didn't know these things or have a sense of them. It was that I was sitting with the men and watching it come up, out of them and out of me, and realizing, oh no, this is actually really true. And that was part of why I wanted to meet with the men, to be like, look, you guys, I have ideas and I have thoughts and I have my own experiences, but I need to hear from you. I need to sit with you and be with you in this place to kind of vet my own sensibilities against what is actually true for the men, what is actually rising up out of them. And so that was, that felt like a real honor to be in that with the men. So those are some of my, I think that was roughly 2 or 3 takeaways. I think the final one, and it's the one that has felt a little significant to me and also a little sensitive, is, there was there are 2. One of the men articulated what he felt like his woman was really asking for of him, the state. And he used the words sturdy and tender. And all of us were kind of like, wow, you really just nailed that. There's a feeling of, and I felt like that was so, there was something about those 2 words together, sturdy, and containing and trustworthy and something to rest into, and strong, right? Sturdy and yet tender. And I recognized that. I've heard it in a lot of the women in various different ways. And what we were acknowledging together is, and that is a mastery practice right there. You're talking about bringing together, this is what a lot of the mastery practices are. They're about bringing together opposites in a way that make each other true, rather than compromising either one, rather than being two, only one or only the other. It's alchemy. So sturdy and tender. He had a beautiful way of encapsulating what he felt like he was being called into. And I was very moved to acknowledge that he's being called into mastery. And that is great. And it asks for a whole lot of grace. That much of what I feel like, especially if we want to enter these relationships of real depth and of real ancient presence, where we're actually eliciting more of the true nature of each other, then that's what it's going to do. It's going to ask us to step into various levels of mastery. And there is a way in which some of the arts, some of the skillful means are, how do we hold each other in that? Not just hold each other accountable, but, have some humility. Have a lot of gratitude for what we're both attempting to do. And that was partly too what, we joined in these councils as sisters and brothers. I'm in this nice position where I'm not anybody's lover, and I'm not anybody's anything. I'm not their mom. I'm not their wife. I'm not their anything. I'm essentially priestess, but it's like, we don't have that. So we were really able to meet in that place of, we're just sisters and brothers here, and how are we going to be good to each other? And that's one of the questions, because related to that is this, which I've been observing in the culture at large, and I observe lots of places, is that, one of the men was expressing how he feels like he's being, it's like his woman wants a king. And there's this, I want, what is it for him to be a king and to show up as a king and to be a king for his woman and all this. And yet the way that he's being asked to become king or step into that or whatever is emasculating. And I think that is often the case. And it's, that you could say, mutually, if you want your woman to be in her queen, you want her to be contained, you want her to be like an overflowing, and you want her to be loyal, you want her to be the queen. Well, then you got to get ready for the fact that a queen won't tolerate certain things. She will not play certain games, right? And it's the same. You want your man to be a king. Well, guess what? He's not going to tolerate being emasculated. What king would do that? It's not, it's an impossible and honestly an immature and unskillful request. And that's not really even in judgment. That's just, we have a lot to learn. I think that's part of what we strive to acknowledge in the school, all the women, and I strive to acknowledge in general, is that, there is a certain level of orphaned remembrance that we're all in, and there should be no shame around it, and how can we be honest with one another, and how can we be honest with ourselves? So I'm interested in some of these things. I'm interested in kind of geeking out and articulating and looking more deeply into, all right, you want a king? You want to elicit the king? What does that look like? What is that like for a woman? What are the arts of that? The school that's what we're essentially doing in the school. We are practicing those arts, but I thought that was a really significant reflection that, and I think it's true, you can't have power and require submission at the same time. You can't ask for, right, they're two different asks. Those are some of my reflections. There's much coming. I've got a lot going on, so it's going to take me a minute to actually kind of get together what it is that I would like to offer and the way in which I'd like to gather, both with men alone and then men and women together around some of these things, mostly around this, where it comes down to me is how do we elicit nobility from each other, and how do we bring grace, and how do we actually be brothers and sisters in God as we are the other things that we are. How can we be, first and foremost, brothers and sisters in God? Secondly, lovers. Secondly, partners. Secondly, all these other things. And really know that we're walking together, that we have a common volition. We are striving for a common respect that's actually authentic, and that we want each other. We want this call into greater depth and greatness and greater love and greater fun and joy. We want that, and we're willing to answer the call for whatever that requires. So near that, I'm going to stop there. I hope you're enjoying some of this Florida sun wherever you are. I am at the moment. And yeah, I'll be in touch. It'll be probably a couple of months until everything is ready, but there are things in motion. And again, for those of you men who joined, I'm really grateful. It was really touching, and I'm really appreciative of the way that you came to be with me. And yeah, I'm excited to be joining with some of you women around these considerations. Yeah. All right. Lots of love.